Namaste, yogis. Welcome to our first Meet a Yogi of 2019. 3 genius hacks for loving your obstacles in 2019. I'm here with Joe Roberson. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks, Suzanne. Always a pleasure to be here with you.
Yes, it's always a pleasure to have you here. Joe Roberson is a newly published author. His book is One Half Breath at a Time. It's out on Amazon. Here he is showing the book. So you can look for that. When you go on to Amazon, search for One Half Breath at a Time. Joseph Roberson is his author name. You can look for that author page on him in order to find it. And right now, there's also a giveaway for people who give reviews. And we're going to show you the free giveaway of this journal for One Half Breath at a Time that you get when you leave a review for One Half Breath at a Time on Amazon. So Joe, congratulations on publishing your book. I know I've been an early reader on this book. It's excellent. But also I know what an accomplishment it is for you to get this published, and you getting this a huge goal accomplished is our inspiration for this talk today about getting your goals accomplished in 2019. We have dedicated at Sadhana this year, 2019, to the Lord Ganesha, or Ganesh. And I thought that we might start by you talking a little bit about who Lord Ganesha is.
Sure. He's been with me the whole time. I actually brought this Ganesha. I carried him back from India in my suitcase, along with a few other things. Ganesha is basically he's called the remover of obstacles. And, depending on which part of India, or, in many of the parts of India, Ganesha is the most important, the number one god. He's also the god of writing and intellectual pursuits. In fact, if you notice, one of his tusks is broken off, and that's because he broke it off to use it to write the Mahabharata. So he's a fitting companion for a big writing project.
And he's an accomplished author himself, then, having written very, very long book.
My next book will be as long. No, I'm kidding. I mean, Mahabharata is ridiculously long. In both Thailand and India, they have many, many, many Ganesha temples. There's one street corner in Bangkok with this humongous Ganesha statue, and all day, every day, people come and leave flowers and candy and basically ask Ganesha to help them win the lottery, help them pass their exams, help them, all kinds of stuff. But we thought that since our theme for the year is overcoming obstacles, that it would be appropriate, since the book just came out, to talk about the process of taking on a project, taking on something you want to do, and like New Year's resolutions, taking on a new habit, taking on a project, and some of the genius hacks that we can share with you for how to first of all create your obstacles. Whenever you create a goal, you're also creating obstacles, because there is no and any goal worth pursuing is going to have obstacles. So number one, like, how do you arrive at your goal, what you want to do? Number two, why don't New Year's resolutions work for many of us? And number three, hopefully we'll have time to go through, helping you to create a tiny habit, like, just as an example of a practical how-to method of how to create a tiny habit. And, we'll use the example of a breath habit, since that's what the book's about. And by the way, in the book, there is this whole thing about habits and the challenge of habits, and this 3-step method of creating a habit is in the book. I can't hear you, Suzanne. Yeah, Suzanne's having audio trouble. So, I officially, I started writing the book in, I think, May of 2016. I certainly didn't think it would take me this long to write it. And there were plenty of obstacles along the way. Yes, I can hear you. You're back. Um, well, yeah, um, I guess, in a nutshell, the word is persistence. um, Persistence, and also keeping the dream alive, is a huge one, because there have been plenty of days when, and I know you've seen this, on occasion, when I just I couldn't see my way through it. I couldn't see how I was going to get through this thing, and I couldn't see. Um, and that's where practicing yoga and meditation, breath work, definitely helps. And also, we're having a support group, having other people who can kind of keep reminding you that, keep saying, just don't get discouraged. That's part of it, obviously. But probably the biggest one is having people who believe in you, who believe you can do it, even when, like, you believed in me when I didn't believe I could do it. And, Elena. Yeah. There's a method. It's called backcasting. And backcasting is sort of the opposite of forecasting. And basically, in forecasting, you get all the data about what's happened to date, and then you take that and calculate out, if it keeps going this way, this is where we'll be tomorrow or next year. That's forecasting. And forecasting is very reasonable, logical. Backcasting is the opposite, because backcasting is very much like the moon mission. I mean, when Kennedy said we're gonna put people on the moon, I don't forget exactly what he said, but that was a big declaration, and that it was a vision of an accomplishment in the future that was juicy, that it really lit people up, it excited people. It was like, oh my God, can we really do this thing? And wouldn't it be so awesome? Can you imagine? And so, with the book, what kept me going a lot of the time was, remember, Joe, remember, imagine how it's going to feel, how that book's going to feel in your hands. The smell of the paper and the ink when you open the book up, and how proud, happy, sense of accomplishment. I mean, all of those emotional things are critical when you're doing backcasting, because basically, it's throwing your hat over the wall. You have no idea how you're going to get your hat back, but you figure out how to get your hat back in the process of getting your hat back. I said I was going to write a book. I didn't know, and the fact is that the book that I just published is not the book I started off to publish. Yes. Yeah, and that's a really important point, that no matter how detailed your imagination is of the final product, it is not going to turn out that way. It's not going to turn out, because stuff happens along the way. You make choices along the way, but the feeling of the accomplishment does not change. So it's, when you do this backcasting method, it's important to realize that, what you're envisioning as your desired future, it may end up being different in the details, in the specifics, but the feeling of getting there is the important part, and the more like and this, this leads into this conversation you and I have been having about New Year's resolutions, that the reason New Year's resolutions tend to not work, in my opinion, is because, you have an idea, you have some kind of goal, you want to create a habit, you want to change a habit, you want to do something. That's your New Year's resolution. And the reason they tend to fall apart is because the vision is not nurtured enough, long enough, it's not gestated long enough for it to take on, it almost like it takes on a force of its own. And yeah, I mean, and the reason New Year's resolutions are done at New Year's is because it's the dark time of the year, it's the dark months, and in the agricultural cycle, this is the time to gestate the seeds that you're going to harvest in the fall. Um, I'll talk about the book in a second, but you just triggered this memory. When I was in grad school at the Maryland Institute of Art, I remember there was this one sculpture that I was making, and I remember for some reason I couldn't figure out, the specifics of it, and I decided to wait. I decided not to begin building it until I could see it. And it was frustrating. I wanted to get on with building it. And I thought, if I start building it, then I'll figure it out. But then I said, no, I'm not going to do that with this one. And I just remember how, when I finally started to build it, it just came together just like I'd seen it, and it was that gestation period of waiting, of not jumping in and, with tools and materials, but sitting with the image, that desired outcome of really, almost like putting an egg in an incubator, of of like sitting on it. I sat on it for weeks, and that was one of the best pieces I made, during those grad years. Mm. Yeah, and I think that, the thing about New Year's resolutions is that if the reason New Year's resolutions fail is because what's missing is the anticipation. It hasn't gestated, you haven't sat on it long enough. And so there's no hankering, there's no anticipation, it's almost like a hunger, that you develop by not working on it physically. It's like, yeah, and it's almost like, like going back to Ganesha, what you have to do in that gestation period is you have to love that uncertainty and kind of bring flowers and sweets to this unknown, vague, this thing that you can't define. You have to keep like courting it. You have to court it without forcing, without demanding that it get done. Yeah, it's a courting period. Yeah, and I couldn't tell you where I mean, I didn't make that up. I can't remember where I got that from. I mean, there's so many different stories about Ganesha, but Ganesha is Ganesha's location in the body is the first chakra, which is the shit that's in your way, basically. And the reason that he can remove it is because he knows where it is. He put it there. Um, what's the role of the tests that Jason and the Golden Fleece? I mean, you take any hero journey, any of the hero journeys. It's a series of challenges. It's a series of tests. It's a series of that's part of the journey. It's if you're gonna accomplish something, if you're going to master something, as soon as you have the ambition, the desire to accomplish something, to master something, you know, you've set yourself up for obstacles. And how you navigate the obstacles, determines the outcome. I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling. I don't know. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Yeah, I think that obstacles for me, when I look at, recently I made this decision to put my apartment together because I saw that that was an obstacle in the path of me doing the work that I came here to Chattanooga to do, to start to really focus on sadhana and my work so that I can support yoga teachers and that I can live the life that I've dreamed. And in my mind, there was, I could very clearly see what the place was supposed to look like. And then I got sick and there's been delays. I've had a lot of custom woodwork done, and it's been kind of rainy, and you can't do woodworking when it's, there's a lot of moisture in the air. And so there's just been these weather delays. There's been delays getting materials. I had one thing that I ordered from China, and it just came here and it's the wrong thing. So now I've got to deal with this eBay seller. And so anyway, so there's been lots of obstacles along the way. And somehow if it had just been, everything had fallen into place, like it would have just been executing a plan. I mean, I think that it's the part that we didn't anticipate that becomes the lesson, the learning, the thing that brings something new to us. What about when you were writing your book? What did you feel like became the lesson that you kind of saw as the big lesson that you were learning, or some of the little lessons that you were learning along the way of getting to that juicy place that you envisioned?
Well, a couple of 2 months or 4 months into writing the book, 2 months or 4 months, I started off writing book A, which was supposed to be the first book, and I put it down because 2 months or 4 months into writing it, I heard my former teacher say to me, from the past, I heard her say, "Do not ask your reader to follow you around a corner that you haven't built." And so what I realized in the process of writing the book was that I needed to write another book first, because the obstacle, I wanted to write a book that would persuade the non-believer in the power, effectiveness, usefulness, value of breath-centered practices. And in order to do that, I had to put aside, I sort of hit this obstacle of, wait a minute, you've already gone past that. So you've got to, and I had to refocus the whole book. And it was hard. I mean, it was hard to give that up and kind of reorient myself and do the outline over again, and like, okay, it needs to be this. It needs to be more about the story is about the police and the military and, the research and all that.
It sounds like you got cut off a little bit, and so I'm going to summarize what I'm hearing as I'm waiting for your feed to come back in, which is that what I hear is that really your intention was to create a book that was truly helpful to a rote beginner, and that although you thought you knew what that was going to be, that as you came to write, that your love, your desire to help was more important than writing the book that you visioned at first, that you came to realize that a true communicator is really reaching to connect with their audience and not just to spew out their wisdom, and that you had this real insight about your role as a writer that really changed from your original idea of just like, oh, I see this information that I'm going to put down on the page.
Yeah, like, for instance, Ganesha probably will be in the second book, which was originally the first book, but Ganesha does not figure into the first book because people who are not in the yoga choir aren't familiar with Ganesha, Yeah. So it wasn't appropriate. I'm so relieved now that I can like go back and start working on the original book, because I get to talk about, a little more esoteric or, spiritual or, that kind of stuff.
I'm so glad that you did complete this book. I feel like it's an important book. I think that these breath practices, I see that as really the wave of yoga right now. I see breath practices as the thing that makes yoga so accessible to so many people, and how clearly you've written about them. It's just so useful. Like, this is a practice that anyone could do. It could help anyone with their health. I'm really glad that you put the time and effort into it, because when I was taught breath practices, they were taught to me as a very esoteric way and kind of a scary way. And I feel like it's so valuable to have somebody take these things that are usable by anyone, that are needed by people, and make them really spend the time to show people their value and how simply they are, how simple it is to put them into action in their daily lives.
Yeah, which is why there's such a focus on the tiny habits and, like little things that you can do. Like, for instance, just the story about one of my students who lost 34 or 36 pounds in the first, I don't know, it was 6 weeks or 8 weeks of this. I did this breath course, 12-week breath course. And about halfway through, I asked the class, I said, what have you been learning? What's working so far? Or what can you share anything that you've gained from doing this class on breath? And this one student said, well, I've lost 30 some pounds. And of course, everybody goes, what? Like, oh yeah, in addition to a diet, right? In addition to, and she said, no. She said, here's what happened. First day or week, after the first class, I was eating dinner and started eating and ate for 5 minutes or 7 minutes. And she said, she noticed this sound, this breath, that she kind of never heard before. And she said it was almost like a kind of, and she said she was smart enough and sensitive enough and enough to recognize that that was the sound her body made when she had eaten enough. This is not esoteric. This is not something you have to go to India to learn, right? You just have to learn to listen to your breathing and listen. It's a way of, instead of driving with your head and your thoughts, and it's like coming back to your body and going, oh, that sound. I should listen to that sound. That's my body telling me to stop eating. And she said that's all she did.
Seems like that's just been the whole theme. It's just to sort of slow down and be with what is, be aware of the aggravation, and instead of fighting it, to come to some peace with it and be willing to allow that to drive you forward. Have a certain trust and a certain faith in yourself as you move toward these goals, and most importantly, believe in your goals and believe in yourself. It seems like your student was able to listen to that, and it sounds like, and I know from the book, from what that I've read, that it's really teaching people the simplicity of that message of the answers are inside you. You can slow down, you can find them, and it doesn't have to, it's not important that you do things that are impressive to other people. It's only important that you return to this sense of connection to yourself in the simplest way.
Yes, yeah. And that's one side of the kind of practices that are in the book. The kind of the flip side is resilience training, resilience training, police and military, and in resilience training that uses breath, so that when an obstacle comes in your path, like guns or like a real situation, or just a really stressful confrontation, that these practices can help you be better prepared by increasing your resilience. Simple things like that. Does that make sense?
It does. I encourage everybody to look it up. So it's on Amazon, 1/2 breath at a time. Joe, thank you so much for sharing yourself with us, and tell us a little bit about this process of getting the freebie that you're showing right now.
This is nothing fancy. It's just a blank journal, 80 pages, spiral bound. But anybody who writes a review, posts a review of the book on Amazon, I'll mail you one. All you got to do is send me your address, and I'll send you one of these, because, anybody, if you shop on Amazon, I certainly look at the reviews. People look at the reviews, and that's, the reviews are really important to help people decide to buy the book, So basically, this is a way of saying thanks to anyone who takes the time to read the book and write a review.
And hopefully they'll use it to start writing their own goals, or maybe even their own book.
Or use it as your your practice record of your breath-centered practices.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Hey, thank you for coming here today. And people can also find you on Facebook. And can you tell the group for your Facebook group?
Well, the page for the book is called One Breath. That's the Facebook page, is One Breath, about the book. And then there's the breathing community, and you can also just go to Amazon. There's an author page on Amazon. Yeah.
Roberson. It's Joseph R. Robinson is the author page. Also, please check out the Sadhana community for yoga teachers and enthusiasts, my Facebook group. And please like this video, comment. If you're watching it on YouTube or on Facebook, it helps more people to see it. Thank you for joining us. And thank you again, Joe, for being our guest. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Good night.
Good night.